Hey guys, welcome back to MMA Library. Today in MMA and UFC news, it seems Alexander Volkanovski will keep his number one spot for the pound-for-pound rankings, even though he lost to Islam Makhachev last weekend. Here's what MMA commentator John Morgan had to say in a recent tweet. Alexander Volkanovski remains the UFC's top pound-for-pound fighter, despite his UFC 284 loss to lightweight champ Islam Makhachev. In the latest official update, Volkanovski maintains his top spot, while Makhachev remains at number 2. Morgan then tweeted about Max Holloway's return to the ranking system. Max Holloway has returned to the UFC pound-for-pound rankings in the number 15 spot. Panelists perhaps influenced by Holloway's 15 rounds of history with Alexander Volkanovski brought the former champ back in latest official update, replacing Deiveson Figueiredo. What do you guys think about the updated rankings? Is there anyone you think should be ranked higher or lower? And is anyone missing from the list? Let us know in the comment section. Josh from the Weighing In podcast believes Islam Makhachev may have struggled with overtraining or his weight cut for the fight against Alexander Volkanovski.
When I watched him walk to the cage, and I even told you this too, when he got into the cage, I'm like, he looks smooth. And I don't know if you guys understand what that means. I said he either overtrained, which is common, or he cut way too much. He had a really hard weight cut. His body looks smooth. No
he wasn't
definition.
able to fill back out.
Yeah, he wasn't able to fill up. His body just looked flat. And I'm not taking anything away from Volkanovski. I'm not making any excuses for Islam. He just didn't look. If you go back and watch the Charles Oliveira fight, he looked full walking into that fight. His attitude seemed different too. Like he had, I felt like, a lot of pressure on him for this fight. I don't think there was pressure on him for the Oliveira fight. But this is a lot. Like I said, like with the Patricio and the Michael Chandler fight.
Absolutely the exact same thing.
It's recently been announced that Mateusz Gamrot will step in to replace the injured Dan Hooker to face Jalin Turner on the main card of UFC 285. News broke on February 8th that Hooker had broke his hand and would not be able to meet Turner on March 4th, and the UFC would scramble to find him a replacement. Amy Kaplan confirmed this, tweeting, "I can confirm that Mateusz Gamrot is stepping in to replace Dan Hooker and will fight Jalin Turner at UFC 285 per sources." It looks like Jose Aldo may take on Floyd Mayweather in a boxing exhibition this year. It was recently announced that Jose Aldo would fight on Jorge Masvidal's card in April. But Aldo is wasting no time and is already lining up another fight against one of the best boxers of all time. Speaking with MMA Fighting, Aldo said, "His side has already agreed, my side too. We're now waiting for the promoters to get the deal done. It might be an exhibition on Mayweather's side, but not for me. It's punch to the face like always, he knows that." During a recent podcast, Brendan Schaub clarified some remarks he made about the winner of the Volkanovski-Islam fight this past weekend. Schaub, along with Joe Rogan and Eddie Bravo, all thought Volkanovski won during a live Fight Companion podcast. Here's what Schaub had to say.
But when we get to the main event with Makhachev and Volkanovski, watching it with the companion crew, obviously we're drinking, obviously we're under the influence of a few things, but we watch that fight. We're talking, we'll miss things. This one we really pay attention to, but again, we are compromised with alcohol and other devices, so I never put too much weight into how we feel and our decisions that night. But I feel like we kind of got this one. There's an argument we got this one right, but rewatching it, I said this in the campaign. I went, hey, are we just biased because it's a David Goliath type of situation? We've been drinking freaking whiskey, and going into the fight, so many people, big name people in this business go, Makhachev's going to slice through him like butter. Eddie said that. Brian said that. Josh, my boy, Josh Thompson said that. Anybody who's familiar with Makhachev goes, he's going to walk through this guy. So do you kind of side more with Volkanovski because he didn't get ran through out in any capacity? It was a good fight. But when you take that out of it, you take the hype out of it, you take the bias out of it, and you look at that fight as just a normal viewer without the bias, and let's say that Volkanovski was a true 155er and Islam was a 155er, true 155ers, and you take all the bias out, would you still score it for Volkanovski? I don't know.
Sean O'Malley gives his take on the fight that's set to go down this weekend between Jessica Andrade and Erin Blanchfield. O'Malley then goes on to say he's not impressed with the rest of the fight night card. Here's the clip.
Speaking of big fights, Jessica Andrade versus Erin Blanchfield. Next weekend, women's flyweight main. Oh, that should have been Cheeto Corey. That would have been next weekend, right?
It would have been.
Damn. Interesting fight there at the women's flyweight division. Aaron Blanchfield coming off a huge win over Molly Meatball.
Oh, yeah.
Jessica Andrade coming over a win over Lauren Murphy.
Ooh, so this is a title elimination, probably.
Yeah, very well could be. Jordan Wright versus Zach. I mean, this card is not very big. There is not very many fights on there. Well, I guess there's a couple prelims. Jamal Emmers. Damn, okay. This is a... Jim Miller versus Alexander Hernandez is not on the main card? You gotta...
Maybe moved up, because that looks like
this card looks really crazy. Yeah, that card looked whack.
Islam Makhachev's coach, Javier Mendez, believes Islam and Volkanovski will fight again in the near future. Here's what Mendez had to say in a recent podcast. It was definitely a challenge. He actually became the challenge that Khabib told me he was going to be. He felt that Alex was going to be the toughest challenge for Islam, and that Islam was going to have to grind it out till the end. That's what he felt. Because the way I looked at Islam, he looked fantastic in training. But Khabib had a feeling that it was going to be a tougher fight than I anticipated myself. So it was exactly what Khabib thought it was. It was a real tough fight. We got pound for pound for a reason, but we beat it from a guy that is the greatest of all time in the featherweight division, and one of the greats of all time. He's going to be, no doubt. I definitely think the UFC is going to want to see a rematch, so I don't see why they wouldn't do one. I think it'd be great. I think the fans would love it. I think Islam would be down for it also, and obviously Alex is. Because, I mean, come on now, he calls himself Alexander the Great, and he lives up to that name. So there's a reason, and he's such a gentleman. He's a competitor, he feels he won, but that's the way you're supposed to feel. He's got the right attitude. I think at some point they probably will do a rematch. When they collide again, it's going to be a different fight, different adversity for both sides. It's not going to be easy for both sides, no way. But let's see what happens. Let's see what's in the cards. I'm sure Javier has the next calling, and let's see what happens from there. Stephen Thompson spoke about getting old and continuing to compete in MMA during a recent edition of his podcast. Thompson used Ferguson's recent downfall as an example of what can happen to you as you begin to age.
So I look at a few things. Like Jose Aldo, I don't think he was. He could have kept going. He was still up there defeating some of the top guys. He still had the speed. He still had durability. But when you got guys like, and they don't have to be old. If they look like they're old, like Tony Ferguson, for instance. Mm-hmm. Tony Ferguson has taken too much damage, and what I mean by old is old in the fight sport.
Mm-hmm.
And just
you can be young but still be old. Like Jose's in his mid-30s.
Yeah, I know. I thought he was older than I was.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's what happens, I think, when you start at a very young age, and you have battles through those years. You just every fight's just a crazy battle, you know. Mm-hmm. But that's what I look at. Like Ferguson, like you got.
So you look at like physical appearance.
Physical appearance. No, not just standing there, but how they fight. Them guys, when you're out there shaking your head like this, like what Tony Ferguson did in that fight, I'm like, bro, this is like the third fight in a row that you've been in a war like this. Like, I don't like seeing it.
Conor McGregor was asked in a recent video about his fight with Michael Chandler. Here's what he had to say.
Can we get your first comment on Michael Chandler as the comeback opponent?
Looking forward to it. Feel good, feel energetic, feel ready. I'm throwing up my high kicks faster than I'm throwing out my jab. So I'm very excited to get back, all right?
When do you get to Vegas?
Tomorrow.
When will we hear about... when will we hear about the deal with Eddie?
The what?
When will we hear about the deal with Eddie?
As soon as it's done.
Guys, thanks so much for checking out the video. If you like the content we do here on this channel, don't forget to like and subscribe to MMA Library for all the latest MMA and UFC news. We'll see you in the next video.